So welcome back. Today we are doing something new. We are doing something we wanted to do for quite some time, and we're very excited to unveil here at the CTS. We're going to be talking about some of the nation's most prolific coaches, doing a dive into their history, how they became the coach they are, and how their journey came to be. And today we're going to kick it off with one of the most polarizing figures, not only in college football, in football as a whole. And of course, with us being Alabama fans, we're talking Lane Kiffin, someone we have a personal relationship with during his stint as an Alabama offensive coordinator. Joey, before we hop into this, first and foremost, how are you today? What are your thoughts on this coaching series we want to put together, something you've been so excited about? And then Lane Kiffin in particular.
You know, one thing you're going to learn about Lane Kiffin is, one, his ex-wife is smoking hot. 2, he likes to coach near a body of water. And number 3, he has no problem getting up and leaving.
Thanks for coming, guys. This was not an easy decision. This was something that happened very quick. A decision that myself and my family made. And we've been here 14 months. I really believe that this is probably the only place that I would have left here to go. Was to go to Southern Cal.
I mean, our recruiting class is down the drain. We don't have nothing. This is bad.
This is how mature people act when they're football coaches.
Hey, we have stuff to say.
We walk around and riot. Fulmer wouldn't have done this.
Lane kind of weaseled his way out of here instead of, being a man about it, and so that's just he could have handled it in a different way, I think.
Well, I don't think we'll be selling too many of these Lane Kiffin shirts right here.
But it's time.
It's time for him to go, evidently.
So in order to tell the story about Lane Kiffin, we have to go to the beginning. And one of the most compelling areas of Lane Kiffin's story, in my opinion, is near the beginning. And that is his stint at the Oakland Raiders, because I think that's a great place for us to really get an understanding as to who Lane Kiffin was. A hotshot college coach making his way to the NFL, becoming one of the youngest coaches in the NFL. And he didn't have the instant chemistry with Al Davis that I think so many Raiders fans were hoping he would. And in fact, it was instantly kind of a war. Al Davis versus Lane Kiffin. And if I'm not mistaken, Joey, Lane Kiffin was right in some of his thoughts, some of his concerns on the Los Angeles Raiders. What was your thoughts as to the whole Al Davis-Lane Kiffin conundrum?
Just look, DeMarcus Russell. Jeez Louise. All that wasted talent and all those cheeseburgers.
All those cheeseburgers. But the interesting thing, Al Davis has kind of made this reputation as someone who drafts off of these inalienable characteristics that, at the end of the day, may not be the most effective. So it was already a relationship that I think so many people were so keen on watching, but a relationship that ultimately didn't last long. In fact, it's been talked about, it's been rumored that before his second season, Al Davis actually tried to buy him out of that contract, a rumor that we need to understand both Lane Kiffin won't talk about and the Raiders have flat out denied. But what is true, what cannot be denied, is that he only made it 4 games into that second season before it was done.
Hey, my toast is melting. Anyway, continue.
Well, I'll tell you what else melted. That was the relationship between Lane Kiffin and the Raiders, because it was not a clean breakup. And in fact, the Raiders stated that they had fired Lane Kiffin with cause. And that means they don't have to pay him any of the remainder of the salary. They don't have to pay him anything that's owed. They don't have to pay him any stipulations that were in the contract. That's a big deal. You usually don't see this happen this sour, this quickly. And Al Davis is no Lane Kiffin fan, calling him a liar. And because of that, this was an intriguing situation, so much so that Lane Kiffin filed a grievance against Oakland, saying he was fired for absolutely no reason, completely disputing everything the organization and Al Davis had said. However, it ultimately didn't work.
It hurts because I picked the guy. I picked the wrong guy. After the season, he told me he didn't want Rob Ryan. I didn't want to coach or change the entire defensive staff and bring in his father. He said, well, I can't win with this guy. I can't win with this team. And we had the problem with Jamarcus, and someday, I don't think it's important now because I love the guy, he had Jamarcus all wrong. He had him all wrong in his thinking about him, and Jamarcus has proved a lot of you wrong, a lot of people wrong. He was going to be the overweight guy, he was going to be the uninterested guy, and he was never that way. He said, we can't win. We got to get a rookie quarterback win. We can't win with this. And so I said to him, what do you mean you can't win? And he said, well, we can't win. And I said, then do the honorable thing. If you don't think you can win, resign.
They ruled in the Raiders' favor, which, once again, if you're in America, you know, big business, they're always going to have a little bit more leeway than the individual. So we move forward. The next place this story takes us is to Tennessee. And in Tennessee, in 2007, he went on to coach a 7-6 record at Rocky Top. Now, being in the SEC, Joey, what was your thoughts when Lane Kiffin introduced himself into Rocky Top? What were you thinking at the time?
He's not coaching near a body of water.
He's not, no, and that's 100% true. He was not coaching near a body of water, and maybe that was the problem there. But what he did do at Tennessee was put together an offense that was very impressive, something he's tended to do everywhere he's gone, something that as Alabama fans, we're very thankful that he has that ability. Because that man, no matter what you say about him, can put together one of the most brilliant offenses I've watched. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't marked by controversy. And in fact, there was an accusation of Florida coach Urban Meyer where he called a recruit into Tennessee's campus.
This is a recruiting violation. I'm going to turn Florida in right here in front of you. But as Nukes was here on campus, his phone keeps ringing. And so one of our coaches is sitting in the meeting with him. He says, who's that? And he looks at the phone and says, Urban Meyer. Okay? Just so you know, when a recruit's on another campus, you can't call a recruit on another campus. But I love the fact that Urban had to cheat and still didn't get him. It's a great job by Eddie Graham.
This is the kind of thing we see with Lane Kiffin all the time. These accusations, this chaos, this drama. But that's kind of the reason why he's become a pop culture icon within college football right now. But you don't go toe-to-toe against Urban Meyer with no repercussions. Joey, at that time, you have Lane Kiffin versus Urban Meyer. Who do you take?
Urban.
In a one-on-one boxing match, who are you taking?
Urban.
Urban. Interesting. You don't think that, you know, those bar visits will weigh him down a little bit?
Urban.
Urban. Okay. I like it. A man with a principled answer. So what happened with Lane Kiffin and Urban Meyer all revolved around a recruit, as so many of these coaching dramas do. Kind of ironic, as we're talking about this right now, is we just saw two other coaches go head-to-head over recruits in Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher. So college football fans, not a novel problem, a problem we've watched for quite some time. However, this all kind of culminated into Urban and Lane Kiffin going at each other, so much so that Lane was pretty much well reprimanded by everybody, and it didn't end well. And thus his short stint at Tennessee kind of culminated after a loss to Virginia Tech, and that was pretty much the end of that.
I believe we're going to win championships here. I believe that we're going to sign the best recruiting class in the country, you know, and we're always going to be in the top 5 every year.
That we're leaving here 14 months later, a lot better team than we were 14 months ago. So I appreciate you guys coming, and thanks again for all your support.
Hey, Lane, out of respect to the Tennessee fans, we answer 3 questions for us.
What does it mean for recruiting, Lane?
At least he finished the season.
He did finish the season. It wasn't the results he wanted, but inevitably the season was ended. His next stop was one that he's probably the best known for. I think if I polled your average college football fan, I think this is where most people associate Lane Kiffin for, and that's USC. Somewhere where he found success. He had his highs. He had his lows, especially a very low point at the end where we'll get to, but Lane Kiffin introduced himself to USC, instantly hitting the ground running. And this was an area where USC fans were really excited about. They had just come off of the Pete Carroll era not too far before that, and they were hungering for someone to lead them to greatness. And Kiffin, with his high-powered offense, looked to be the guy. Right back on the beach, right back on the water, and that's exactly where he wants to be. And so the interesting thing is in 2010, he didn't even have a full roster. He had 71 scholarship players and still led the Trojans to an 8-5 season, which really cultivated a lot of excitement for the USC fan base and a lot of curiosity for those who weren't USC fans. What's this guy going to do? A guy who's had such an interesting career to this point, but is really making waves in the largest media market in the world. All the eyes of college football fixated on the Trojans, and for good reason. The next season, he coached them to 10-2, and everybody thought this this is the return of the Trojans of the Pete Carroll era, and for good reason. I mean, Joey, goodness gracious, if you were a USC fan at the time, talk to me about what you were thinking if you were a USC fan, and then what were you thinking when Lane Kiffin has all this chaos in his career, goes to LA, and instantly success in the manner he has?
I would be thinking national championship.
Hard not to, isn't it?
Very hard.
Yeah. So how does it go from Lane Kiffin leading USC without a full roster to back-to-back winning seasons to the end we all know and love, being left on a tarmac? Well, that is an interesting story, I should say. We'll have so much talk about seasons, I mix up the word story and seasons. Kids, this is why you don't do videos live. But in 2012, the tables really turned on Lane Kiffin. In 2012, where everyone was expecting another great season, a 7-6 record was had. And for many programs, that's not terrible. But if you're coming off of the results Lane Kiffin had netted in the Pac-12, where so much was wide open, well, a lot more is demanded than 7-6.
True story. Lane Kiffin was down. He was drinking a lot. He has ended his career. He's having trouble with his marriage. And let's face the facts. He was married to probably one of the hottest chicks I ever seen. I mean, I'm a very confident man, but I could never tap a woman like Lane Kiffin. Matter of fact, I could never tap her on the shoulder if I had to.
No.
Back in 1970s, Lane Kiffin's mom had an affair with a linebacker coach from Kent State. His name was Nick Saban. And when Lane found out about it, he called up his biological father and asked him for a job. And, Nick Saban says, sure, won't you come on? I'll teach you some things. So he got to have a father and son relationship, not only with his biological father, but he get to learn from the GOAT, the greatest coach of all time, Nick Saban. And this is where Lane Kiffin learns how to be a coach, learns how to be a man with integrity, learns how to coach a team that is not near a body of water. And this is where Lane Kiffin learns, not only winning his second national championship as an assistant coach, but just like every other father and son relationship, sometimes this is going to be some turmoil.
Those are called ass chewings. I mean,
disclaimer, we do not endorse all of the opinions and thoughts of Joey. Sometimes they just come out and sometimes they make its way onto the show. And look, that's perfectly fine. We're going to keep them. But at the same time, no, you're hearing the ramblings of a madman. But what we can agree on is the ass chewings that happened at Alabama between Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin. Now, those were some legendary beatdowns. I mean, you talk about some gifs that just keep on giving. I don't know how many times you've used the gif of Nick Saban chewing Lane Kiffin out, but for me, it's a staple in my texting world. I mean, it's a staple in my social media presence. Very proud of that one. Very glad the cameras got it. But what Lane Kiffin did do for Alabama, in all seriousness, is something we can't just blow by. He modernized the offense. And in doing so, we also need to talk about Nick Saban and how that relationship comes to be, because it highlights why Nick Saban is the greatest coach of all time. He is not afraid to adapt.
well, we kind of took on the task when he came here of, changing the whole offense to be more spread, to be more RPO oriented, to use motions and formations to create issues and problems for the defense. And he did a marvelous job of that when he was here. He's continued to build on it. But I'd say I learned that from him.
While these other legendary coaches that have brought to the table their own schematics that have permeated college football and lasted, whenever the times change and their scheme gets tested, they tend to shell up. Not Nick Saban. Whenever his scheme was tested, he knew it's either swim or sink, and he chose to swim. And in doing so, he brings in Lane Kiffin, modernizes the offense, but that way he can get a constant look at a modern offense to modernize his defense. Thus, we get the second era, if you will, of the Bama dynasty. I always like to think of Bama's dynasties in two parts, Joey, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. There's the pre-Lane era, and then there's the post-Lane era. And not that it revolves around Lane Kiffin, but it's just the way Alabama operated offensively and defensively and the subtle changes that allowed them to extend that dynasty. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Lane Kiffin opened up the passing game for Alabama. For a majority of the time, it was a running game, and Nick Saban has been quoted as saying that we need more passing. We need to open up the passing game, and Lane Kiffin came in. He hired Lane Kiffin just for that. He wanted a passing offense, and to this day, Alabama passes the ball a lot more than they run the ball.
Yeah, and look at the quarterbacks we've gotten on the back end because of that.
Jake Coker, Blake Sims, Jalen Hurts, Tua. We Bryce Young.
They're
Mac
all there.
Jones. This is something that Lane Kiffin set the groundwork for here in Alabama. So for that, we commend you. But however, his passive aggressive ass is walking around, finally got a head coaching job near a beach, which he can't give up. And he's like, oh my God, this shows you his commitment. Any coach that goes off and is about to go coach a national championship game and you want to leave? Now, this is one thing you about to coach a bowl game or the Music City Bowl or the Cheez-It Bowl, but you're about to play a national championship game against Clemson. And you just get up and leave. And not only that, you was so passive aggressive. I want to stay, but, I got to do this and that. FAU may win a national championship this year. No, they wouldn't. No. You stay and win a national championship. You could have had 2 rings instead of 1.
You're not going to find much of an excuse for the way Lane Kiffin left Alabama. At the end of the day, look, I'm never mad if you come to Alabama and then you get a head coaching job. Because Nick Saban has talked about this. Nick Saban did an interview a few years back when he was asked about how many assistants he's had leave. And he answered the reporter stating, look, I tell all these guys, you may only get one opportunity at a head coaching job, and you better take it if it comes. That opportunity doesn't come a lot. Take it. So Nick understands the relationship of this game, but there's right ways of doing things, and then there's the wrong way of doing things. And leaving before that game was wrong. I think everybody can agree with that, right? I think, view Lane a little bit different than I do. It's probably just the way we look at this, right? But I think we both can 100% agree, no doubt about it. That's not how you handle that situation. That's a national championship. I mean, what's bigger than that?
Yes, and you left the national championship game for FAU? I mean, you're rich. You couldn't just go to the beach. Is Lane Kiffin taking all your money? I know she's taking all your money, but I mean, could you tell her like, hey, can you borrow? That's a talk about. We got to talk about that. I mean, come on. At least call her up and ask her to let you borrow some bucks and drive to the beach every once in a while. Jesus loves me. Anyway, FAU.
Lane Kiffin makes his way to FAU. He finds his way back to the beach, and it does not start off well. Starts off 1-3. But Lane Kiffin turns it around, riling off 10 straight wins to finish 11-3. And if you're an FAU fan, I mean, you've got to feel good. 10 straight wins is impressive. I don't care where you're at.
Wait, FAU has fans?
They do. They
wow.
I know, Joey. I know. But they're there. They exist. They're a proud bunch. Very proud, very cantankerous, but they exist.
It's probably because of the skin cancer getting to the brain.
Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have the ramblings of a madman. We do not endorse some of the opinions of Joey, but regardless, we love him. And they're great opinions. They're novel opinions. So in 2018, we see that drop back from Lane Kiffin from the previous season. 2017, first season, 11-3, great results. The second season, questions were asked, 5-7. That's not the results you want. But in true Lane Kiffin fashion, you don't know what's coming next. He follows the 2018 season up, which was a disappointment, 5-7 record, with a 2019 that saw FAU go 10-3 and win a really, really big game against UAB. But it didn't last long, and Lane Kiffin's next stop would then be announced, which would find his way back to the SEC and Ole Miss. Now, Joey, what was your thoughts when Lane Kiffin announced that he was coming back to the SEC?
Well, the one thing, he's back to his old games. Did he play in the bowl game? No. He just gets up. He gets up and leaves. Just like that's Lane Kiffin for you. And then he goes to Ole Miss. Now, I was in complete shock because Ole Miss at the time I didn't think was near a body of water. But if you look on the map right here, what is that? That's Sardis Lake. Body of water. There's water.
Yeah.
And they got sand around it, so you may think he's at the beach. And before, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I heard Lane Kiffin loves popcorn.
Yeah, he very well may. But one of the things that I think I've always thought about with Lane Kiffin in the SEC is I'm very glad he's in the SEC. In my opinion, the SEC needs a Lane Kiffin to keep everybody honest. And what I mean when I say that is,
you said they need SEC needs Lane Kiffin.
Yes,
that's like saying a prostitute needs STD. Why do we need Lane Kiffin?
Because the SEC's defenses were at a point a few years ago of looking antiquated, and Lane Kiffin introduces himself into the league and revolutionizes Alabama's offense. All of a sudden, the SEC is now known as an offensive powerhouse league. Part of that is because you have to keep up with what the best team in your league is doing. If Alabama's doing it, you damn sure better do it. If Alabama's got a great offense and a great defense, you better have a great offense and a great defense. So Lane Kiffin forced the SEC to evolve, and his presence in the SEC will keep them honest in the sense of Lane is always going to be evolving. That's what we do know about Lane right now. That's going to make it to where everybody else has to evolve. Everybody else has to stay modern. And that is why I think it's great that he's in the SEC.
Another thing is great is the return to Tennessee as a head coach. Throw mustard bottles, water bottles, beer cans, golf balls, kitchen sinks, their in-laws who happen to be their...
Yeah, it was not a great scene if you were a Lane Kiffin fan or if you were an Ole Miss fan, because there were golf balls coming onto the field. It was really one of the more interesting scenes I've ever seen, not only in football, but in sports. So on a serious note, right? Like, we just don't see a head coach during an interview having things thrown at him and it being acknowledged in the interview. It was almost like it was in a Twilight Zone.
He had it coming. He had it coming.
Maybe. But Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, this is going to be an interesting season. He has to replace an offensive coordinator, has to replace a defensive coordinator. How is that going to look? Well, look, if we're being honest, I'm not so much worried about Lebby leaving Ole Miss. Lebby, I think, is a very talented offensive coordinator. I think Lebby has a very bright future. He comes from the Bryles tree, then gets introduced to the Lane Kiffin tree. That's going to be a high-powered offensive mind. But Lane is a high-powered offensive mind. I have complete faith that Ole Miss's offense is going to be Ole Miss's offense, but what is that defense going to look like? What are you thinking there, Joey? Because, I mean, Lane's been good in the SEC, but we're waiting for him to take that next step.
I honestly don't see Ole Miss doing anything this year.
Interesting. You don't think with the transfer portal they could do something?
What have they done?
I mean, they got a lot in the transfer portal. They're top 5, I think, because I'm not 100% certain.
What team in the SEC did not get a lot in the transfer portal?
That's a fair point, but I think Ole Miss got more than a lot of teams. Not every team, but then a lot of teams.
More than Alabama?
I don't know that I would say that. I think they got more in terms of numbers, but Alabama is more impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I've honestly, I'm telling you right now, Ole Miss is not. I don't see Ole Miss doing anything this year.
Now, they did get one of the best running backs in the nation, in my opinion.
Do you have a good offensive line?
I don't know that they need it for the way they've been able to do their running backs. I mean, look last year, Lebby had 4 guys touch the ball more than most running back committees had in the nation, and they were putting up numbers. So, I mean, like, they were getting their guys involved. And Zach Evans was unbelievable at TCU.
We shall see. The future looks bright for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. But the question is, how long is Lane Kiffin going to be at Ole Miss?
Then we have to talk about his Twitter presence. We have to talk about his social media presence. And inevitably, we have to tie it up with kind of current events.
Yeah,
that's another reason I love Lane is his Twitter presence. He's hilarious. He's hysterical.
Yeah, he's a bundle of fun. He's fun for the whole family.
No, genuinely, man. Like, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but that guy is always tweeting out something that's just like no other coach is tweeting out what Lane is tweeting out half the time, and it's just awesome. A few years ago, he got fined, and he was saying how he was going to pay the fine in pennies, but he kept getting how many pennies he'd need wrong. And on Twitter, there's no edit function. And so he keeps replying to his tweet, adding in a 0 until he finally got it right. And it was like 5 tweets later. And it's just stuff like that. Like he's just Lane. It's just funny. I love that he's in the SEC because I think it adds a certain level of intrigue and drama into a league that already has the best football in the nation. And now you have Lane Kiffin. I just love it, personally.
So, in conclusion, what do you think Lane Kiffin's going to be in 5 years? You think he's going to have a national championship as a head coach?
I think that's going to be very tough to have a national championship in 5 years. And it's just because I think Ole Miss still has a lot more to go before they're in that conversation. And when you look at it, Georgia is there, right? Like we can talk about what Georgia has to replace, but we know that they're a top 3 recruiting class year in, year out, right? We know what they recruit. They're much more ready now than Ole Miss is. That's 2 teams in the SEC that is more ready now than Ole Miss. I think we could even have a conversation that A&M, from a talent perspective, might be more ready now than Ole Miss is.
And let's not forget LSU.
And let's not forget, great point, Joey, genuinely, because LSU did great work in the transfer portal.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Ty Hayes. Ty Hayes, you're now part of the CTS-Sports room, but we also have one of the greatest sports channels on YouTube. Please tell everybody where you can find Around the Table Sports.
Yeah, so I run the Around the Table Sports YouTube page. A lot of fun doing college football content. You can catch me talking about pretty much any college football team you want to hear about. Do live streams. We talk recruiting. We talk schematics. We do constant collabs. I'd love to have you a part of our journey. Up-and-coming YouTube channel, and it's been a lot of fun. Love to have you all part of the community.
And please, if you want to see more Ty Hayes, also watch and subscribe to the CTS Sports Room. And remember, people, win or lose, a second cousin is just another option on a dating app for Auburn fans.
No.
And we are out. Why'd you say no? Catch y'all later.